Order, please. Before we begin the daily routine, I'd like to bring to the attention of the members present some special guests who are in the East Gallery today. We have members of the 1859 Spring Hill Army Cadet Corps. There's 29 cadets from Spring Hill. That's right. You heard that, Spring Hill. Beautiful Spring Hill. 29 cadets, and they're accompanied here by 4 chaperones, Second Lieutenant Cynthia Crow, Captain Stanley Hunter, Captain Drew Steves, and Civilian Instructor Robin Steves. And they're here to tour the city and tour the provincial legislature, and I'd ask them to rise and to receive the warm welcome of the House, please. Thank you. Thank you. The MLA will be the Honourable Member for Cumberland South. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the proceedings today and hope you enjoy the tour of the legislature. Before we begin the daily routine, the subject for this evening's late debate was submitted by the Honourable Member for the Minister of Environment and Labour. Be resolved that MLAs and all Nova Scotians recognize the importance of private land conservation in this province and the work being done by the Nova Scotia Environment and Labour to encourage private land stewardship, such as the Panuke Lake Nature Reserve, owned by the Bowater Mersey Paper Company, and the Brothers Island off the coast of Parisboro. Be debated this evening at 6 p.m. Begin the day routine, presenting reading petitions. The Honourable Member for Halifax Fairview. The Honourable Member for Halifax Fairview.
Recognizing beauty before age, I see, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a petition from 45 members of the Nova Scotia Government and General Employees Union. The operative part reads as follows. We, the undersigned, call on the Ham government to withdraw Clause 46 of Bill 62 in favour of an extensive round of discussions with NSG, EU and CUPE that will conclude by the end of 2004 about longer-term solutions to the funding problems of the plan and the possibility of joint governance or trusteeship. And Mr. Speaker, I have affixed my signature to this petition.
Petition is tabled. The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I read my petition, I would beg your indulgence for an introduction.
Yes.
Okay. In your gallery, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to introduce 2 community members who are fighting for a safer 101 highway, and particularly the interchange at Ben Jackson Road. And I'd like to introduce Sonia Wood and Christopher Mansky, and I would ask the House to give them a warm welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a petition, the operative clause of which reads, I support a full interchange at the Ben Jackson Road and the old number 1 highway connector. And this has been signed by 69 additional people in the local area, and I too have affixed my signature.
Petition is tabled. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a petition entitled with regards to the 1% contribution rate increase for public service pension, with the operative clause therefore be resolved that we, the undersigned, call on the Ham government to withdraw Clause 46 of Bill 62 in favour of an extensive round of discussions with NSGEU and CUPE that will conclude by the end of 2004 about long-term solutions to the funding problems of the plan and the possibility of joint governance or trusteeship. Mr. Speaker, I've affixed my signature to the additional, to the 100 plus names that are on this petition.
Petition is tabled. The Honourable Member for Chester St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to table a petition, and this is a letter to support the request by local residents to have Crochers Point Road paved. And there are 26 local residents living along the road that would like this work done. And I have certainly signed that, presented by John Chataway, and I certainly would agree that they pave that road. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Atlantic.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a petition signed by some 100 members of my community concerning road conditions and poor maintenance in the Williamswood area, to which I have affixed my signature.
Petition is tabled. Any further petitions? Presenting reports of committees. Tabling reports, regulations, and other papers. Statements by ministers. Government notice of motion. The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the active involvement of communities is vital to the protection and preservation of the environment, and whereas the Sackville Rivers Association has been a vital force in the rehabilitation of that river system by encouraging local stewardship, promoting proper planning, and taking direct action to restore the river's ecosystem, and whereas Canadian Geographic Magazine has nominated the Sackville Rivers Association for a Canadian Environmental Award, recognizing the association's grassroots involvement in environmental protection, therefore be it resolved that this House congratulate the Sackville Rivers Association for its nomination for a Canadian Environmental Award and wish the association good luck when the award ceremony is held on May 31st. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notion, passed without debate.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas last evening, hundreds of enthusiastic and talented young musicians from 6 senior and junior high schools, along with a mass grade 6 band from 12 elementary schools, gathered at Exhibition Park for the 14th annual Western Area Showcase Concert. Whereas these students, along with their conductors Barb Coates, Craig Reiner, Mark Cumming, Bernard Curtis Williams, Susan Matt, and Jeffrey Stern, and Tobias Beale, delighted a large and appreciative crowd with an evening of fabulous music. And whereas for the 14th year in a row, Bill Esterbrooks once again did a masterful job as Master of Ceremonies. Therefore, be it resolved. Do you want me to rephrase that? Therefore, be it resolved that this House congratulate the students, their conductors, the Master of Ceremonies, and everyone who helped organize last night's wonderful musical event. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Nova Scotia Construction Safety Association is a non-profit association which offers safety training and conducts audits to promote positive safety culture shift in the construction industry, and whereas the Nova Scotia Construction Safety Association has well-trained and knowledgeable staff, and whereas since their inception a decade ago, lost time accidents in the construction industry have declined, therefore be it resolved that we acknowledge and celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Nova Scotia Construction Safety Association and commend their efforts to help make the construction industry safer. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I read this resolution on behalf of the Premier. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas this year marks the 100th anniversary of the Pictou County Farmers Mutual Fire Insurance Company, and whereas on June the 20th, 1904, a few farmers got together to form the company to help protect their fellow farmers. And whereas a rich history of the company has been compiled and is being printed locally with the aim of having it available for the anniversary celebration on June the 18th, 2004, which will include an open house in the afternoon and a dinner in the evening. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this House acknowledge the 100th anniversary of Pictou County Farmers Mutual Fire Insurance Company and the origins of the company, which rest in neighbor helping neighbor. And Mr. Speaker, I would request waiver and passage without debate.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. Introduction of bills. The Honourable Member Colchester North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a bill. The title is an act representing the Royal Canadian Legion and Philip Houston property in Tattamagush.
The Honourable Member Colchester North begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act Respecting the Royal Canadian Legion and Philip Houston property in Tattamagush.
Bill 85, entitled An Act Respecting the Royal Canadian Legion and Philip Houston property in Tattamagush.
Order this bill be read a second time to future date. The Honourable Member for... No. Any further bills? Notice the motion. The honourable member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Marion Webb has been the secretary at Astle Drive Elementary School for 19 years, providing care and concern for children and their families while functioning as a top-notch secretary to the school and staff. Whereas Marion Webb has been active in many school events over the years and has improved the experience at the school for students, parents, staff, and the community. Whereas Marion Webb is retiring as secretary at Astle Drive Elementary School in June 2004. Therefore, be it resolved that this House recognize the many years of service provided by Marion Webb as secretary at Astle Drive Elementary School and wish her all the best in her retirement. And I ask for waiver, Mr. Speaker.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cape Breton South.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Tyrone Gardner has been a local boxing icon for many years in Cape Breton, and whereas Mr. Gardner is well respected for his boxing skills and his continued involvement in the sport, and whereas Mr. Gardner is being honored by the boxing fraternity for his achievements and sportsmanlike conduct, therefore be it resolved that Tyrone Gardner be congratulated on his induction as a member of the World Boxing Hall of Fame. I would ask for a waiver, Mr. Speaker.
Question waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Guysborough, Sheet Harbour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the town of Canso is proudly celebrating its 400th anniversary this year, and whereas North American historical literature first mentioned Canso in 1604, but it was in the 1700s that Canso gained importance in a dual role, both militarily and in trading, as Grassy Island, now part of the Canso Islands National Historic Site, played an essential role as the French and the English attempted to claim land in North America. And whereas numerous festivals have been scheduled in 2004, including a high school reunion, therefore be it resolved, MLAs in this House of Assembly acknowledge the tremendous amount of enthusiasm and volunteer effort being put forth by community residents as Canso celebrates their 400th birthday this year. And I request waiver of notice.
Waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Atlantic.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Urban Farm Museum Society of Spryfield was established in 1996 to commemorate the agricultural heritage of Spryfield, to facilitate food production in the urban area, and serve as an adjunct teaching venue for local schools in natural and social sciences, arts, and family economics. And whereas the Urban Farm Museum has leased 3 acres of old pasture from the Kidston family in the heart of modern Spryfield and have worked tirelessly to clear the land. And whereas the Farm Museum on Saturday launched its Young Farm Volunteers program for the summer, whereby local teens will act as garden mentors for younger children, therefore be it resolved that this House congratulate the members of the Society and wish them a long growing season and much good cheer in the coming summer. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Digby Annapolis.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas gasoline prices have skyrocketed as of late, and the people of Nova Scotia have been spending more to fill their cars, and whereas this government has done little to help the people, so they must help themselves. And one of the ways they can do this is to reduce their speed by 10%. Whereas a reduction in speed of 10% will reduce an average person spending on gas by 18%. Therefore be it resolved that the members of this House recognize that common sense tells us less speed equals more savings. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waivers, is it agreed? Here, no. Notice is tabled. The honourable member for Pictou East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day shall move the adoption of the following resolution.
The honourable member for Pictou East has the floor.
Whereas the Nova Scotia Heart and Stroke Foundation runs annually an immensely successful fundraiser involving elementary school students across Nova Scotia called Jump Rope for Heart. And whereas 287 students from the Frank H. McDonald Elementary School in Sutherland's River raised an astonishing $9,519, the most ever raised by a school in Pictou, Antigonish, or Guysborough counties over the past 20 years. And whereas the school's top 4 fundraisers were Ashley Hasher, Brooke Taylor,
James Lees, and Jenna Burns. Therefore be it resolved that all MLAs commend the students and the staff of the Frank H. McDonald Elementary School in Sutherland's River for their sensational work for the Nova Scotia Heart and Stroke Foundation, and I seek waiver.
It's not me, make it clear.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice, and on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Nova Scotia School Athletic Federation recently held their annual awards luncheon, and whereas Corey Smith as male athlete, Deidre Gormley as female athlete, and Coach Harvey Bate, all from Pictou Academy, were appropriately honored, and whereas the athletes received exemplary participation awards and were chosen to attend the luncheon on the basis of their athletic ability as well as their comportment in representing their schools, while coaches received outstanding service awards. Therefore, it be resolved that the members of this Nova Scotia Legislature congratulate Corey Smith, Deidre Gormley, and Harvey Bate for their athletic contributions at Pictou Academy. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Family and Children's Services of Annapolis County is celebrating 90 years of service to the community, and whereas Family and Children's Services of Annapolis County have a long tradition in making positive changes in the lives of their clients and communities, and whereas Family and Children's Services of Annapolis County held their annual meeting on May 18, 2004, and will continue to serve the people of this community well into the future, therefore, be it resolved that all members of the House recognize the hard work and accomplishments of the board and staff of Family and Children's Services of Annapolis County. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Colchester, Muscataba Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice, and on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas concern is being expressed by many local businesses about a drastic reduction in Canadian National shunt rail service, and whereas the Truro and District Chamber of Commerce has expressed serious concern about this apparent, unannounced reduction of freight service to businesses, which they say is resulting in businesses now being sorely inconvenienced and who are facing financial pressure based on the decline of this service, and whereas to make matters even worse, personnel from Canadian National Railways have been unavailable to answer questions concerning this reduction in rail service. Therefore, be it resolved, MLAs support the Truro and District Chamber of Commerce and Nova Scotia businesses using CN Rail in an attempt to have the shunt rail service maintained. And, Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice.
Waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas 1 out of every 3 Nova Scotian seniors will suffer a fall this year, causing significant personal, family, and economic hardship. And whereas a provincial coalition covering many sectors, such as seniors, veterans, provincial nonprofit organizations and agencies, governments at all 3 levels, tourism and business, have been working together since 2000 to develop and implement a provincial falls prevention strategy and action plan to benefit seniors, veterans, and caregivers. And whereas Community Links, with its 180 member organizations, has played a key role in building this provincial capacity to take a population health approach to a major health problem. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Nova Scotia Legislature congratulate and thank Community Links and its many partners as they enter the 3rd phase of their Falls Prevention Initiative with financial support from the Nova Scotia Office of Health Promotion. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member Cape Breton South.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice, and on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas life provides for many of us great opportunities, a few challenges, and much happiness, and whereas one of the happiest days in one's life is the day 2 people walk down the aisle as husband and wife. And whereas on Saturday, May 22, 2004, Liberal caucus researcher Tony McGrath will marry his best friend Don Crow in a ceremony at St. Teresa's Church in Sydney, Nova Scotia. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the legislature extend our best wishes to Don Crow and Tony McGrath on their special day and wish them many years of joy and happiness. And Mr. Speaker, before I ask for waiver, I would like to introduce Tony, who's in the gallery here today. Okay, I'll ask for waiver of notice. Okay?
Thank you. There's a request for waivers. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. Sir, congratulations on behalf of all the members of the House. The Honourable Member Kings North.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Where almost 5 years ago, Valley Subway owner Daryl Fraser...
Please. Order, please. The Honourable Member Kings North has the floor.
Whereas almost 5 years ago, Valley Subway owner Daryl Fraser and computer business owner Mark Connors recognized the need for a specialized point-of-sale computerized cash register at Subway sub-shops and teamed up to create subtotal POS systems. And whereas today their business employs 12 people and has expanded into markets all across Canada, the United States, and Europe, and is one of only 2 approved vendors for Subway sub-shop cash registers, thanks to hard work, top-of-the-line customer service support, and state-of-the-art equipment. And whereas this year, this business is expected to earn a profit between $15 and $20 million and has been so successful that Subtotal POS is in the business of hiring more people to help with their business. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this House recognize the entrepreneurial spirit and initiative of Subtotal POS founders Daryl Fraser and Mark Connors and wish them much success as they continue to expand their business. I request waiver.
Waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Community Services on introduction.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 2 friends of this province that have exemplified themselves in the field of volunteerism are here with us today in the West Gallery and East Gallery. And that would be in the persons of Jim and Laura Shea. And I would ask the Shays to please stand and accept the warm greetings of the House.
Thank you. We certainly welcome the Shays to the gallery today and hope they enjoy the proceedings. The Honourable Member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I bring this resolution forward on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the mission of the Brain Injury Association of Nova Scotia is, quote, to promote and contribute to an environment in Nova Scotia which is responsive to the needs of all persons affected by brain injury and which results in brain injury prevention, unquote. And whereas the objectives of BIANS include providing support for people with brain injuries and their families, lobbying on their behalf to governments, public awareness, and promoting quality care, rehabilitation, education, research, and brain injury prevention. Whereas good communication with the public and with members is vital to successful development of any organization. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the Legislative Assembly congratulate Editor Mary Bourgeois on the 50th issue of BIANS News and wish the board, advisors, and members continued success. And I ask for waiver, Mr. Speaker.
Waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the municipality of the County of Kings has nominated George Foote as its Volunteer of the Year, and whereas Mr. Foote has given 18 years to the Woodville Community Centre Group, where he has initiated fundraisers to install a wheelchair ramp and elevator, as well as coordinated the annual Apple Blossom Barbecue, and whereas for 27 years George has served as chairman of the Cornwallis Square Village Commission, working on a variety of committees throughout Kings County. Therefore, be it resolved, the members of this House congratulate George Foote for this nomination and acknowledge the contributions he has made to his community. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Pictou East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas from his job as a newspaper delivery boy at the age of 6 to his position as president of Advocate Printing and Publishing Company in the 1970s, Bruce Murray devoted his professional energies and vision to the newspaper and printing firm. And whereas Mr. Murray passed away suddenly this spring while on the job, surrounded by his beloved newspaper family and his son and daughter who work closely with him. And whereas described by Rob Roy, CEO of the Pictou Regional Development Commission, as a pillar and a visionary, not only with his company, but with his community. Bruce was not only a keen businessman, but ensured that his efforts were used to direct resources back to those in need in the community. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House salute the life and work of Bruce Murray and send our condolences to his family, who are working hard to carry on his tremendous legacy, and I seek waiver of notice.
Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Sorry, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Mainland North Volunteer Recognition Committee held its first volunteer recognition May 6, 2004 to honor volunteers who've made a difference in their community. And whereas Paul Fleming served as the volunteer manager of Bridgeview's first outdoor skating rink located at DK Butler Park on Flamingo Drive, without his commitment of 35 hours a week, this project would not have been the tremendous success that it was. And whereas the outdoor skating rink was a prime example of how a community can come together, people of all ages were able to enjoy skating in the fresh air and had access to a healthy, fun-filled environment. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this House acknowledge the tremendous contribution Paul Fleming has made to the Bridgeview community. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Mr. Waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cole Harbour for passage on introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I could draw the attention to the House to the West Gallery. In the West Gallery, two members from the Elizabeth Fry Society Mainland Division, and they are Laurie Ealer and Donna Phillips. They're here to observe the proceedings today. If they could rise and accept the welcome of the House, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you. We certainly welcome our special guest to the gallery today, the Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Marty Walker of Lunenburg was awarded the Atlantic Television System's Maritimer of the Week Award, and whereas Ms. Walker was nominated for this award because of the endless hours she has devoted to the Canadian Cancer Society over the years, and whereas Ms. Walker, a cancer survivor herself, wrote a book about her own experience and donated copies of her book as a fundraiser to other non-profit organizations. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of the House of Assembly congratulate Marty Walker on receiving the Maritimer of the Week Award and thank her overwhelming generosity and contribution to society. And Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Mr. Waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas gas prices have hit 99.9 cents a litre in Nova Scotia, and the government plans to introduce a bill that will give motorists 2 days' notice if prices will rise. And whereas the leader of the official opposition said last week, when the minister introduced the bill, that the 2 days' notice was a good idea. And whereas the leader of the opposition then claimed that his party never said it would support the bill. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House consider what the leader of the opposition said not as a flip-flop, but as one reporter noted, just a flop. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver. Sarah Several noes. Noes is tabled. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be doing this on behalf of the member for Truro Bible Hill. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Wade Taylor received a merit award from the Truro Sports Heritage Society for his outstanding contribution to hockey, and whereas Wade Taylor was on the board of directors.
Now, Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries has the floor.
Was on the board of directors of Hockey Nova Scotia from 1995 to 2003, and vice president of finance administration, and was the finance chair of the Women's World Hockey Championship. And whereas Wade Taylor helped build or prepare the bid to have Halifax and Sydney to host the 2003 IIHF World Junior Championships, provide financial leadership and direction to the host organization committee, and work closely with the Hockey Canada to stage the most successful World Junior event in history. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate Wade Taylor on earning a merit award from the Truro Sports Heritage Society and thank him for his major contributions that helped him bring 2 World Hockey Championship tournaments to Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Fairview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't going to read this resolution, but I feel inspired by the member for Glace Bay. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. whereas a Liberal MLA who voted against money for seniors and in favor of an immediate election then told the Cape Breton Post, quote, "I'm glad there isn't going to be an election and to see the seniors get some help," close quote.
Order, please. The all member Halifax Fairview has the floor.
And whereas the Ontario Liberals, who signed a pledge that they would not increase taxes and who promised not to run a deficit, delivered a budget yesterday where they do both. And whereas Liberals in this House are fond of saying they want to send a message, therefore be it resolved that the message is loud and clear. Liberal statements and Liberal promises cannot be trusted under any circumstances. And Mr. Speaker, that is worthy of debate, so I will not seek waiver.
Notice is tabled. The honourable member for Richmond.
We never voted for the budget. Mr. Speaker, I've also been inspired to stand following that. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas this session of the House of Assembly has been a perfect example of how the NDP and its leader will do anything and say anything rather than focus on sound public policy. Whereas the NDP have flip-flopped on the 10% tax cut, the Assessment Act, and now the Tories' feeble attempt to give...
Order, please. The honourable member for Richmond has the floor.
Thank you. I'll start again, Mr. Speaker. Whereas the NDP have flip-flopped on the 10% tax cut, the Assessment Act, and now the Tories' feeble attempt to give 48 hours notice of hikes in gas prices, which the NDP leader said was a good plan, echoed by the member from Halifax Fairview, and then the member from Hanseas, who said the plan was better than nothing. And whereas yesterday, the leader of the NDP ran throughout Province House with arms flailing, trying to convince the media that his party did not flip-flop on their initial support for the Tories' 48-hour gas plan, to which a member of the media agreed, stating that the leader of the NDP and his party had only flopped on the issue. Therefore, be it resolved that Nova Scotians remember this session as a perfect example of why the NDP must always remain in opposition, for their actions have proven that a quick media clip and the flavour of the day will remain the NDP's top priority.
Notice is tabled. The honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, and I have a resolution which is not inspired by the honourable member's office. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Lunenburg County, Nova Scotia produces many quality athletes in a number of sports, and whereas Dustin Sutherland of Blockhouse is one of those athletes who excels in the field of gymnastics, and whereas Dustin won 3 gold medals recently in the at the Nova Scotia Trampoline and Tumbling Championships, a first for Nova Scotia, and will represent our province at the national championship that were held in Toronto yesterday. Therefore, it be resolved the members of the House of Assembly congratulate Dustin Sutherland on his record-breaking performance at the Provincial Trampoline and Tumbling Championships and wish him continued success as he competes at the Nationals in Toronto. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Waivers are agreed. All those in favour say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Richmond.
Thank you, Speaker. I thought I'd end on a congratulatory note. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Nova Scotia voters are often accused of having a short memory when it comes election time. Whereas this cannot be said of the New Democratic Party members of the new riding of Cape Breton-Canso, as even they remember the sad legacy of Michelle Dockrell, as her own party rejected her as their candidate in the upcoming federal election. Whereas Michelle Dockrell will be remembered for her attacks against job creation in her own riding, a strategy that resulted in her defeat after one term by Liberal MP Roger Cuzner by a mere 12,000 votes. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House congratulate the New Democratic Party for rejecting the candidacy of Michelle Dockrell, and that this serve as a reminder to their party that Nova Scotia voters will not soon forget their negative representation.
Notice is tabled. The honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Wedgeport's parish priest has been named a prelate of honor...
Please. Order, please. Order, please. The honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Wedgeport's parish priest has been named a prelate of...
The honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whereas Wedgeport's parish priest has been named a prelate of honor by Pope John Paul II, and whereas Monseigneur Gérard Leblanc has served the Yarmouth Diocese of Roman Catholic Church for over 40 years in his many different capacities. And whereas Monsignor Leblanc currently oversees the churches in Melbourne, Pigneys Point, Comoes Hill, as well as his native parish of Wedgeport. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House congratulate Monsignor Gérard Leblanc on being named a Prelate of Honour and wish him much success in his future endeavours. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas in May 1992, the first Liverpool International Theatre Festival was held in Queens County to celebrate the riches of amateur theatre, to provide educational opportunities for students through workshops, and to raise public awareness about amateur theatre. And whereas this biennial event has attracted amateur theatre companies from around the world, including Romania, Australia, and Venezuela, and whereas the Liverpool International Theatre Festival will be taking place again this year from May 19th to 24th, once again attracting an international theatre audience to the south shore of our province. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House applaud all of the volunteers for their dedication involved in planning and hosting Liverpool's International Theatre Festival. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice, and on a future day, I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the federal gun registry is like a horror movie. You want it to go away, but it won't. Whereas a federal audit that is sharply critical now tells us the Federal Department of Justice routinely threw procurement rules out the window when it came to picking contractors to work on the ill-fated gun registry. And whereas the audit shows that nearly 99%, yes, that's right, Mr. Speaker, 99% of the contracts awarded in 2000 by the Canadian Firearms Centre were non-competitive. Therefore, be it resolved, MLAs on the opposite side of this legislature take a firm stand, just like this side of the House has done, and publicly oppose this horrible, nightmarish $2 billion boondoggle, often referred to as the National Gun Registry. Mr. Speaker, and I ask for waiver notice.
For waiver, hear no. Notice is tabled. Any further resolutions? Order, please. The Honourable Member of Cape Breton South on point of order.
Mr. Speaker, we're going into question period, and I'm just wondering if the Deputy Premier would inform us, is the Premier going to be here today for question period?
Deputy Premier.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, he will be here very shortly. And the Minister of Education, I'm advised, is on his way up. He's in the building. He's just going.
Order, please. The Honourable Member of Cape Breton South.
I have to take exception to the government here today. We have 3 ministers out today, and we have not been informed of any of those people. We're not going to be here till question period. Now, you know, we have a number of important questions today, so I would suggest that Mr. Speaker, we have a short recess until the Premier. If the Premier is coming, I would suggest we have a short recess till the Premier arrives.
Order, please. I think normally there is a notice sent of who is going to be absent from the House. I have not received any today. Is he on his way? Order, please. The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I think we could maybe recess for about 5 minutes. I think he should be here.
Great, so we'll recess till 2:50. Okay, agreed? Thank you. Order, please. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, I'm asking for permission to revert the order of business. Government notice as a motion.
Request to revert to government notice of motion. Is it agreed?
Agreed.
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to read a resolution about a young man who is in the Speaker's gallery. And following reading the resolution, I'm going to ask our guest to rise and be acknowledged by the members of the House. Mr. Speaker, I give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas 13-year-old Matthew Day of Dartmouth has raised thousands of dollars for local charities and regularly lends his time and talent to numerous community nonprofit groups, including the Nova Scotia Heart and Stroke Foundation, the ALS Society, and the Parkinson's Society. And whereas this young recipient of the Queen's Golden Jubilee Medal has not let either dyslexia or cerebral palsy slow him down one bit, as he is also a skilled debater and an avid baseball player, musician, and reader. Whereas Matthew continues to add to his already long and impressive list of good work, as he is presently writing a book on bullying. Therefore, be it resolved that this House acknowledge Matthew Day's positive attitude and thank him for his positive contribution to his community and his province, and I request waiver and passage without debate.
Request waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried.
I would ask.
Certainly welcome Matthew to the gallery today, and we may be looking at a future Premier of the province. Who knows, eh? Welcome here, Matthew, and congratulations. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, before we go to orders of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to stand on a quick point of order, I had made a commitment during my estimates to provide an Acadian flag to all members of the House. They are here. They'll be passed out, and I just want to present the first copy, or the first one, to the Premier. Premier?
No problem.
Order, please. Orders of the day are questions put by members. Question period begin at 2:52 and end at 4:22. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Last fall, we asked the minister responsible for the Emergency Measures Organization to help Richard Bonner after Hurricane Juan tore the roof off his business. Mr. Bonner recently found out that he doesn't qualify for help because he could have been insured. The problem is he can no longer afford the extended insurance coverage needed to cover the costs of the hurricane. And now, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Bonner is facing bankruptcy. Mr. Speaker, for weeks, we have been pointing out the problems in the province's disaster assistance program, and my question today to the minister is this. Are you prepared to let Nova Scotians go bankrupt through no fault of their own as a result of a natural disaster?
The Honourable Minister of the EMO.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And certainly this government does not abandon its citizens. The unfortunate case, as the member opposite outlined, is down to the point whether insurance could have been bought. And as the honourable member knows, the DFA rules are the federal rules so that cost sharing occurs. And we go to every effort in the appeal with people who have suffered losses under those circumstances to try to encourage the federal government to support that claim.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the province says, and of course the minister has just reiterated, that Mr. Bonner is bound by the federal rules. And in the letter to him, which I will table, they say, and I quote, the ability of the province to offer assistance is limited by the rules of eligibility established by the federal government. Yet, the Deputy Prime Minister, in her letter to Mr. Bonner, says, and I quote, the DFA guidelines do not in any way restrict the design and implementation of provincial and territorial financial assistance programs. Mr. Speaker, while both parties seem to be pointing their finger at each other, no one is helping Mr. Bonner. So my question to the minister is this: what specific steps in the province are you taking to put in place a disaster assistance program that will meet the needs of all Nova Scotians?
Minister responsible for EMO.
Thank you very much. And the honourable member outlines a critical weakness of the federal DFA program, which this provinces and other provinces are endeavouring to correct. For 6 years now, we have been in discussions and negotiations with the federal government in looking at ways to put more flexibility and allow more coverage for citizens of this province and other provinces across Canada. Until we can achieve a new, more flexible regime with the federal government, we are bound by the present rules.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your final supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what the letter underlines is the essential weaknesses in the minister's argument. The letter from the Deputy Prime Minister specifically says the provinces are not bound by the DFAA rules. The minister knows that. They are refusing to help Nova Scotians like Diane and Brian Ingalls, another family who cannot find any help. My question to the minister is, last week you undertook to review the Inglis's file. Have you done that, and what have you found?
Honourable Minister of EMO.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I was provided with the information. I've sent it back to staff, and I'm awaiting the analysis of that particular case. And once it's reported back to me, I will report it to the House.
Thank you. The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question's for the Premier. Mr. Speaker, crude oil prices have reached record highs. Gasoline has hit basically $1 per litre. The long weekend is coming up, and there could be another gas price increase. High gasoline prices will hurt our economy. In Newfoundland, it was announced on Monday that gasoline would rise by 7 cents a litre. Newfoundland is a regulated market where the price is set each month. In Nova Scotia, it's going to be 48 hours. And my first question to the Premier is, what assurance can the Premier give that the requirement of 48 hours notice will not create lineups and a gas shortage?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Nova Scotians are looking for leadership in terms of doing what can be done on the government side to protect the public. One of the issues that has come forward to the attention of government from the buying public out there in Nova Scotia is the suddenness of price increases. For that reason, we indicated that if the legislation that we propose goes through the House, it will give us the legislative opportunity to put in place reasonable regulations that will smoothen out the market and eliminate such things as reasonable discrepancies in price.
The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party in your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the former Newfoundland gasoline price regulator, George Saunders, commented on the proposed Nova Scotia solution, and he said, I quote, "Adopting a policy by which consumers are given 48 hours notice before gas prices increase is dangerous and could result in fuel shortages as people rush to the pumps." The reality is no one can stop world prices from going up, Mr. Speaker. No amount of regulation or notice will stop that. What drivers need is relief now. And my question to the Premier is, what has the Premier done to ensure that his minister is not proceeding down a path that will hurt Nova Scotia drivers instead of helping them?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think the majority of Nova Scotians understand that with world crude prices increasing, that there will be an overall increase in price of petroleum products here in Nova Scotia. What they can't understand, Mr. Speaker, is why the petroleum market and the market at the gas pump is different than other markets. For example, you get the weekly flyer from Canadian Tire, and they will guarantee the price of a lawnmower for the next week. They alert Sears what the cost is going to be, but they guarantee the price for a week. We're simply saying that we have to have the same kind of accountability in the petroleum pricing market. We have agreed in the House for a select committee that will come forward with recommendations by the 31st of August. What we need is a piece of legislation that will allow those recommendations to be quickly put into effect.
The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party, in your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, basically the Premier can't give any assurance that his proposed cure for gas prices will work. Newfoundland has full regulation, and still gasoline has gone up by 7 cents a litre in one day. Only 2 other jurisdictions in North America have gasoline regulations beside Newfoundland, and that's Hawaii and Prince Edward Island. Nova Scotia seems to be heading towards partial regulation that will satisfy no one. So again to the Premier, instead of tinkering with regulation, why won't the Premier provide gas relief to consumers now, not next week, not in 3 months, but now?
The Honourable Premier.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the minister responsible for the bill is very anxious to engage the Leader of the Liberal Party in this discussion, and I defer to him.
The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, and Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our piece of legislation will not only provide consumers with advance notice of increases or decreases in price, but it requires that fuel companies justify, Mr. Speaker. This is actions, not just words. I want to read to the member opposite. Hansard, December 3rd, 1997. For some time now, staff in our department have been consulting with the industry and consumer representatives over this thorny issue of gasoline prices, Mr. Speaker. I could read on and on and on. Those are words from the member opposite in 1997. He talked about it, Mr. Speaker. We did something about it. He talked the talk. We walked the walk, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, we revealed that this government is actively involved in discussions about privatization of government services, or what the government prefers to refer to as alternate service delivery. When we asked the Minister of Health to assure the people of Nova Scotia that he would not privatize much-needed public health services, he replied, "We do not have, at this time, any specific plans with respect to further privatization of health care." Mr. Speaker, that's not the kind of answer that gives Nova Scotians much comfort about what this government's real plans for the future of health services are. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to give the minister another chance today to make a clear statement that there will be no privatization of health services under this government. Will he make that commitment today?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, what I'm prepared to guarantee to the people of this province is that we will continue to do our very best to provide the best medical service that we can provide in this province. And when the Honourable Member made reference to any further privatization, the Honourable Member should acknowledge that the provision of physician services in this province is provided by private practitioners. That is the context in which that particular statement was made, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition, on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the minister's response doesn't do anything to comfort people like Leslie Grattan, whose story with the healthcare system began 2 years ago. Ms. Grattan waited for months to see a gynecologist after a referral from her family physician, with additional weeks of waiting for a recommended procedure. She was told on one occasion that the equipment needed to perform the procedure was out of order. She was finally told that the MRI could be fast-tracked for her to get in an appointment in 6 months rather than waiting in 6 weeks, rather than waiting 6 months. When Ms. Grattan contacted our office, she wondered what level of physical deterioration she would have to sink to before she finally got the diagnosis and treatment she needs. So I want to ask the Minister of Health, what's your answer to Ms. Grattan's question? How sick does she have to be, and how sick do others have to be on waiting lists for diagnostics and treatment in this province to have the government get up and take notice and do something about it?
Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, with respect to diagnostic services, we have made great strides in this province. Just recently, I was able to participate in the opening of an MRI facility in Sydney. That has greatly relieved the pressure on diagnostic services. We are continuing to look at locations for additional MRIs in this province, Mr. Speaker. We have made considerable progress, and I will remind the honourable member, Mr. Speaker, that the service we will provide in this province will not result in the dismissal of 250 healthcare workers like the Saskatchewan NDP government did recently.
The Honourable Leader of Official Opposition on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, because she couldn't count on the system this government has created, finally Ms. Grattan took matters into her own hands.
Right.
In an email to us, Ms. Grattan said, and I'll table that, Mr. Speaker, in a probably futile effort to speed things up, I will be doing something that no Canadian citizen should ever have to do. I'm having an MRI done privately in Halifax. I am fortunate that I am in a position that will allow me to do this. Many of my friends, neighbors, and acquaintances are not so blessed. I'm going to table, Mr. Speaker, today the bill she received from the private MRI clinic, a bill for $785. And my question, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Health is this. What assurance will he give Ms. Grattan that he's going to fix the system so that neither she nor any of her friends or neighbors will ever have to pay $800 for a diagnostic service again?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I previously indicated, we have, in fact, added considerably to the level of service and to the credit of the Government of Canada through money that they provided to us, but we're providing the operational funding for additional MRIs in this province. We have plans for 2 more to be brought to this province in the near future. That, Mr. Speaker, is part of our ongoing commitment to increase our diagnostic capacity for all citizens of this province.
The honourable member for Cape Breton South.
Mr. Speaker, my question today is to the Premier. Mr. Speaker, gasoline prices have reached a crisis in Nova Scotia. There will be serious consequences for the economy. Mr. Speaker, the Minister for Service Nova Scotia has said that it is far beyond the ability of government to control and influence the price of crude oil. The NDP member for Halifax Fairview has said that nobody should be under any illusion that Nova Scotia can stand as an island isolated from world fuel prices. Mr. Speaker, the Energy Minister has said nothing on this issue. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that there is only one thing government can do to alleviate the high cost of gasoline. Government can lower, Mr. Speaker, the fuel tax and provide immediate relief to Nova Scotia drivers. My question to the Premier is why won't the Premier end the charade that he is actually doing something about high gasoline price and provide an immediate reduction in the price of gas by lowering the tax?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On average, Mr. Speaker, the province of Nova Scotia takes in on gasoline tax $254 million, all of which, Mr. Speaker, all of which goes into the budget of the Department of Transportation to pave roads, to fix bridges, and to make sure year-round our roads are well maintained. This is in marked contrast to the $140 million that Nova Scotians pay in gasoline tax that goes to Ottawa, of which a very, very small amount comes back to be spent on the province's road. I would encourage all members of this House to encourage the federal government to start returning their gasoline tax to where it'll do the most good, and that is to those that use the roads and buy the gas. We're doing our part, Mr. Speaker. We want Ottawa to do its part.
Now, member Cape Breton South on your first supplementary.
Mr. Premier, right at this moment, Mr. Premier, we're not talking to them. We're talking to this Premier and his responsibility to the consumers of Nova Scotia. And what he neglected to mention in his answer is that the government is obtaining a windfall because of the increase in gasoline prices in this province, a windfall that they haven't even budgeted for and should be returned to the consumers of this province immediately. Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, that same Premier said when he was elected he would not increase fuel taxes in this province, and he has done the opposite. So all I'm asking this Premier to do is to be fair with the consumers of Nova Scotia and give them a tax break on the prices of gasoline in this province, which is much too high, and there needs to be some relief. And the only way this government can give relief is a direct rebate to the consumers of this province by way of lowering the taxes.
Honourable the Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for again reiterating the flexible taxation policy of the Liberal caucus when they have one view on personal income tax, another view on gasoline tax. You know, Mr. Speaker, you've got to be consistent. And the one thing that you can never accuse the Liberal caucus of being is consistent. They are all over the map on taxation.
Y'all member Cape Breton South on your final supplementary.
One day, next day, who knows?
Mr. Speaker, I think the people of Nova Scotia will judge pretty quickly who's misleading Nova Scotians. You know, we're talking about a very serious issue here, and the Premier gets up talking about Sears and Canadian Tire in his answer to our leader a few moments ago. My final supplementary to the Premier is, the Premier knows, and his government knows, that they're making a windfall off of the increase in the tax at the pump. All we're asking to do, Mr. Speaker, is to return some of those profits to consumers. It shouldn't be hard to do. It's as easy to do as the $155 checks they gave out on the eve of the last election. My question is to the Premier, why won't you return some money to the consumers of this province who are being gouged by unfair prices?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the reason why the suggestion doesn't make sense is because I'm not going to go to any MLA in this place and say, we're not going to fix your bridges, we're not going to pave your roads, because we're going to divert the money that we now give to the Department of Transportation to something else. Car owners and those that buy gasoline want good roads and they want safe bridges, and that's our commitment. Good roads and safe bridges.
Now a member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've just learned that the Department of Natural Resources plans to allow Louisiana Pacific to cut on Crown land in the Nictaw River area. The Department of Environment staff are concerned about the impacts on wildlife, the watershed, and local residents. Before the minister stands up and says we need to protect a multinational business with a head office in the United States, I want to stress that this area attracts tourists, supports local business, and is the home of endangered wildlife. So, Mr. Speaker, my question to the Minister of Natural Resources, we know that you're allowing Louisiana Pacific to cut in this area without any public consultation. Are you also going to allow them to clear cut?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the honourable member. No, we're not going to do clear cutting. We're going to do selective cutting in the area. That piece of land was burned approximately 50 years ago, I think, and we have been managing the forest in the Nictaw area for a number of years now, and we have some growth there that we want to manage, and that's what we intend to do, Mr. Speaker.
Now, Member Hants East on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I remember the minister's definition of clear cutting was forest management. So when he says selective harvesting, I think he means he's going to select an area to clear cut. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, we've been told that a 2-year logging plan has been approved. The Department of Natural Resources is now waiting to hear from Louisiana Pacific about their plans to build a road into the area. Mr. Speaker, this deal is causing a great deal of concern in the valley. The Nictaw River area is a spawning area for endangered salmon, and the area is a major tourist attraction. Any clear cutting in this area could cause many problems, as detailed in an internal memo from the Department of Environment that we received through Freedom of Information, and I'd like to table that to the House. So, Mr. Speaker, my question to the minister: you can cut a big area in 2 years, so how much are you willing to let this company harvest?
Now, Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As early as last Saturday, Mr. Speaker, our staff for concerned citizens of the area wanted to visit the site with our staff, and we did that for the concerned citizens. And those people, to my knowledge, Mr. Speaker, are now agreeing to the process that we're going ahead with the management of the forest in the Nictaw area.
Now, member for Hants East on your final supplementary.
Well, that's a big surprise to the warden in the area, Mr. Speaker, because we found out before we left for the House today that he hadn't heard anything about this agreement for the province to allow that cutting to go on. Mr. Speaker, the Annapolis County Council and local residents asked to be consulted before any decisions were made on the future of this area. The area in question sits at the headwaters of the LaHave and the Nictaw Rivers. Mr. Speaker, my question for the minister, will you put these cutting plans on hold until you meet with all the stakeholders involved?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I must say that the honourable member from Annapolis brought this to my attention approximately 2 weeks ago. I invited that member also to go to the open house on Saturday, but I will commit to this House and all members of the legislature and to Nova Scotians that before we do anything, before we move ahead, I definitely will talk to the municipality, and I'll talk to them any day they want to speak to me.
The Honourable Member for Richmond.
Speaker, with the announcement of a new Department of Energy 2 years ago, the Premier claimed his government took the future of our offshore industry seriously. He has since gone to 3 ministers in less than 2 years, and now, following an expensive search of up to 160 candidates, the first Deputy Minister of Energy is leaving. This follows the departure of Dr. Tom Ward, Deputy Minister of Health, and the Premier's own Communications Director. Rather than undergo a new search for a Deputy Minister of Energy, or even select someone from the initial 160 applicants, the Premier has decided to look in his own political backyard and reward a loyal Tory with little or no experience in the energy sector. Yesterday, both the Minister of Energy and Deputy Premier refused to even touch the issue of the new Deputy Minister, instead saying it was solely the Premier's decision. So my question is, can the Premier tell Nova Scotians why he has refused to undergo a search for a qualified and respected Deputy Minister of Energy to lead this important department, such as was done under the tenure of Dan McFadden?
The Honourable Premier.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Two of the challenges right now facing the Department of Energy are, number one, dealing with the regulatory overlap that exists between ourselves, Newfoundland, and the Government of Canada. The new appointee to be Deputy Minister of Energy actually has extensive experience in dealing with regulatory issues and as well negotiations with Ottawa. Secondly, another of the very important files in the Department of Energy is the Crown Share Agreement payment, and that particular person, who will soon be the Deputy Minister of Energy, has been handling that file since day one, so she's ideally suited to move into that department.
The Honourable Member for Richmond on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, that's almost as funny as their plan to regulate gas prices here with their 48-hour notice. But, Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotians are extremely concerned about the future of offshore development in this province, along with the unprecedented cost of gasoline. Our offshore has not seen a major development since the Sable project. At a time when our province needs a qualified and respected Deputy Minister to lead the Energy Department, the Premier instead decided to appoint an unknown in the energy sector whose main goal will be to cut red tape in Ottawa. Ironically, this is the same individual who was the Deputy Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs while the government continues to cry that it can't make any deals with Ottawa. So my question to the Premier is, will the Premier today recognize that this was a poor decision on his part and immediately begin to search for a Deputy Minister of Energy that is qualified and prepared to move our province forward?
The Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The individual that is concerned in this debate is a person that has worked directly with me since 1999. She has performed extremely well. She has proven herself to be an excellent public servant, and she will do a very, very good job in the Department of Energy.
Honourable Member for Richmond on your final supplementary.
Cecil, you don't get any say.
Mr. Speaker, the fact is that today Nova Scotians are paying $1 a litre for self-serve gasoline in this province. Rather than seeing our offshore industry booming in the search for oil and gas to raise the level of supply, our offshore is almost dormant. Mr. Speaker, rather than seeking out a qualified Deputy Minister of Energy, it appears that the Premier is rewarding a loyal soldier before he leaves office. So my final supplementary to the Premier. If the Premier will not reverse his decision, will he at least assure Nova Scotians today that the new Deputy Minister of Energy is not in a conflict of interest in this new position?
The Honourable Premier.
I'm not aware of any conflict of interest. If the member opposite has information that I don't have, then he should provide it to me. I'm very happy with the appointment, and the appointee is going to do a very good job.
The Honourable Member for Timberlea Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question through you is to the Minister of Education. Parents in the community of Chester are concerned because 3 very popular teachers at Chester District School have been transferred without explanation. And Mr. Speaker, I've personally heard the testimonies of students of these teachers. They will be missed. 400 people in this community have signed a petition to bring the teachers back. Now, the parents are here in the gallery. I know the minister took a quick moment to meet with them. My question, however, is to the minister, after your quick chat, will you make public what commitments you gave to these parents about their concerns?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, no.
Now, Member Timberley Prospect, on your first supplementary.
Well, there's cooperation in minority government for you. Last week, Chester District's Home and School Association unanimously, Mr. Speaker, passed a resolution calling for the South Shore Board to resign. Now, clearly, Mr. Minister, we have a problem. These parents are requesting leadership from this government and from this minister. They say the process has been unfair. These parents will reserve, in fact, I will pay the rent for a public meeting held in the community of Chester. And I can assure you, Mr. Minister, that it will take that arena in Chester to host the parents who will attend. We will go that far, the parents and this MLA. Will you or a member from the Department of Education attend such a meeting?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is correct. I did have the opportunity to meet with some parent representatives a few minutes ago, and we did discuss the issues. The issue that the honourable member has just put on the floor is a personnel issue. And as I've said on the floor before, and indeed in response to a question from him, is that the people who are affected, indeed, there were 4 people who were transferred from that school. All 4 of them are governed by the collective agreement between the NSTU and the government. We have not heard from the union. My understanding is that everything happened in those transfers is consistent with the collective agreement, and I do know that that honourable member would not wish to have a minister interfere in a collective agreement.
Now, Member Timberley Prospect, on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the situation in Chester has raised a lot of questions about relationships between the community, its school, the school board, and the department. Aside from the personnel and one particular person who did attend a public meeting where I attended, we are now faced with a situation with this board that we are going to have a member who is involved in this process up for a major promotion. That major promotion is a conflict of interest as far as the parents are concerned, as far as the community is concerned about their school and this particular official from the department. So I would ask, would the minister please undertake for the children, for the parents, for the community of Chester, a full investigation of this situation?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member knows that I would not go so far on the floor of this House to comment on anyone from a personnel matter, and he knows that. The issue with those who were transferred, I say all 4 of them are governed by the collector or under the collective agreement, and if they have difficulty with the protocol, the process that was followed, then they do have an organization that has an established way to deal with that issue. Now, fundamentally, in my discussions with the parents, it's not just for the teachers. They quite frank, they have said publicly they're unhappy with some of the decisions of the school board. I did tell the members at that time, the members with whom I met, that there is a process that will take place this fall in which they can, if they so choose, to voice their dissatisfaction with school board members.
Now, a member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the CEO of the Cape Breton District Health Authority revealed the real agenda of this government when it comes to addressing the situation, the tragic situation of prescription drug abuse in Cape Breton. And quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, its agenda is delay. The CEO stated, and I quote, "The job is bigger than he expected, and once the group figures out how the wrong people are getting the drugs, then he'll look at a way of treating the addicts." Mr. Speaker, people need help today. People are dying. They simply can't wait until the fall because all of a sudden the problem is now bigger than someone expected. So my question to the minister is, why hasn't this minister made the provision of support and treatment of people with OxyContin and other prescription drug addictions his #1 priority?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we will be awaiting the report from the District Health Authority. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, if the District Health Authority feels there is urgency with respect to communicating with us, I'm sure they will. To this point, I have not received such a communication, but when we do receive the communication from that group, Mr. Speaker, we're prepared to work with them.
The Honourable Member for Glace Bay, and your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, a lot of people can't wait. There are people who are crying and begging for help. They have nowhere to turn. People, Mr. Speaker, like Mickey Howlett of Glace Bay, who can't get help. She can't get help at Direction 180 in Halifax because they're struggling with wait lists. Mickey doesn't qualify for help from Addiction Services in Metro because she doesn't meet the guidelines for acceptance into the program. And Mr. Speaker, this 39-year-old woman is crying for help. She's willing to accept help, but she can't find it in her own community. My question to the minister is, will the minister today commit the necessary resources to immediately establish a community-based methadone clinic in Cape Breton, which could not only help Mickey, but countless others just like her?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, we will be receiving recommendations from professionals in the addiction services relative to the reports that will come from that area. And Mr. Speaker, we will make our decisions based on the professional advice that we receive.
I'll member for Glace Bay, and your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know what else I can do. I'm begging the minister to help people like Mickey Howlett in Glace Bay who are in danger of dying, Mr. Speaker. To help people like Mickey Howlett. But perhaps maybe I could enlighten the minister that this is a problem that is getting out of hand in Nova Scotia because in his own premier's backyard, Mr. Speaker, in his own premier's backyard, a report this past weekend revealed that there are now 80-some people hooked on opiates such as OxyContin in Pictou County. Those people need help as well, Mr. Speaker. So my final question for the minister is, given that the problem is now more widespread than Cape Breton, why won't the minister immediately implement an action plan to provide the much-needed treatment to individuals that are seeking help and that just so happen to live outside of the metro area?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, indeed, we recognize that this is a problem that is not confined to just Cape Breton. There is an initiative underway in Cape Breton, however, and we believe that it's worthy to receive from them the benefit of their analysis. We also have within the department professionals on addiction services who are working toward addressing this on a province-wide basis, Mr. Speaker. I await their recommendations, and we have every intention of acting to address this in a very rigorous manner. And Mr. Speaker, I'll be making my decisions on the basis of professional advice, not from the catcalls coming across from this floor.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Harbour Eastern Passage. Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. The Honourable Member have his chance. The Honourable Member for Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, the Elizabeth Fry Society is an advocate for women who are in conflict with the law. For over 2 years, the staff at the Elizabeth Fry Society in the mainland area, Mr. Speaker, have been trying to get policy manuals governing how female inmates are treated at provincial jails. They don't want information that would be a breach of security, Mr. Speaker. They simply want in writing how prisoners are being treated and how they are to behave while they are in prison. Mr. Speaker, I asked the Minister of Justice, why has his department so far refused to provide these policy manuals to the Elizabeth Fry Society?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I should begin by indicating to the House what fine work the Elizabeth Fry Society does on behalf of inmates. They do a wonderful job assisting inmates integrating back into society and really helping them to turn their lives around. Mr. Speaker, I can indicate to the honourable member that I appreciate what they are trying to accomplish, and I will take it under advisement with staff to determine what the concerns are. And I do know the concerns do center on security issues. However, I understand the honourable member's concern, and I'm prepared to take it under consideration.
Honourable Member Cole Harbour's turn passage on your first supplementary.
I want to say for the record, Mr. Speaker, I raised this issue in a letter back in 2003. I raised this last week in supply debate. So this isn't the first time the minister's had a chance to avail himself of this issue and take a look at it. And Mr. Speaker, what is particularly interesting is when you compare this to the federal Canada Corrections System, their policies, their administrative procedures are all on the website, accessible to every Canadian, every person in the world if they wanted to take a look at. Members at the Elizabeth Fry Society are concerned at the present practices of this provincial government with regard to its jails. Prisoners are put in isolation and not permitted hot meals. For up to 30 days, every meal they're provided with nothing but cold sandwiches, Mr. Speaker. That is not the case in the federal prison, where they have an open book with regard to their policies. So I want to ask the Minister of Justice, how can the Elizabeth Fry Society volunteers and staff help inmates understand the rules if nobody knows what the rules are?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my understanding is that the issue here may not revolve around so much what the rules are, but what the consequences are for breaking the rules. But Mr. Speaker, I indicated to the honourable member that I do understand the nature of his concerns, and I am sincerely interested in trying to find a way that we can assist the Elizabeth Fry Society in dealing with women in institutions.
Member Cole Harbour's turn passage on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, protocols such as strip searches, isolation, and visitor rights are all a big mystery to both inmates and those who advocate on behalf of them, Mr. Speaker. Corrections Canada obviously has no problem being open and transparent with regard to its administrative policies. So I want to ask the Minister, will he make a commitment to meet with the Elizabeth Fry Society in the next week to sit down and work out how these policies can be more accessible to advocates on behalf of women inmates in the provincial jail system?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I can indicate to the honourable member that I'd be pleased to meet with the Elizabeth Fry Society. I obviously won't commit to the exact time, but in the near future.
The honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Community Services. The Community Supports for Adults program oversees group homes and small option homes for disabled adults. Right now, this program is under review, and a discussion paper written on the future of the Community Supports for Adults paints a somewhat fuzzy picture as to the future of small options and group homes. My question: can the Minister confirm whether vacant beds in small option homes are not being filled while this review takes place?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When somebody requires the services of one of the organizations that provides assistance for people with disabilities, it's done on an application basis. It comes forward, and based on the circumstances would determine as to whether they would be accorded a bid.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley, on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, a female inmate at the Nova Federal Penitentiary for Women was notified of her parole being accepted in January of this year. She functions at a low intellectual level, and her counselors decided she should live in a supervised environment. A group home has accepted her, but because of a freeze on new admissions to the home, she can't access a bed. I ask the Minister, why is his department putting the lives of disabled Nova Scotians on hold during the review process?
Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for the chance to clarify the admission process. The admission process is something that's done through the department. So if the department approves that particular applicant for admission to the home, then they would be accepted into the home. But it's up to the department staff to make that decision.
Honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley, and your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, because she can't access a bed, this woman has had to remain in prison, even though she was paroled over 4 months ago. Group home and small option home operators are telling us they are not allowed to fill vacant beds, but the need is still there. Mr. Speaker, I ask the Minister, how could his department allow a paroled, intellectually challenged woman to continue living in prison because it can't decide what to do with the Community Supports for Adults program?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the renewal initiative because it is a very positive initiative, and as discussed in the budget, we are doing some positive things in that area. There have been some options that have been brought forward.
Order, please. Order, please. The Honourable Minister has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are criteria in place. It is up to the professional staff to measure whether an applicant meets the criteria. Based on that recommendation, the decision would be made. But, Mr. Speaker, as a result of the renewal initiative, I am looking forward to more options being available for people that might otherwise not meet the criteria. So we look forward to the response from the discussion paper and moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Richmond.
Speaker, earlier this week, the head of the Community Task Force on Prescription Drug Abuse sent a clear message to this government. They need help, and they need it right away. So, Speaker, despite the statements of the Minister of Justice, his support in terms of providing assistance to this problem have been non-existent. As the Minister is more than aware, the province of Nova Scotia has a contract with the RCMP to carry out provincial responsibilities. My question to the Minister is, could the Minister of Justice please inform all members of this House exactly how many provincial government police positions in the CBRM are vacant because of the lack of provincial government funding to the RCMP in that area?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the responsibility for policing in CBRM is that of the CBRM. Mr. Speaker, we provide provincial policing throughout Nova Scotia, but the responsibility for policing in CBRM is the responsibility of CBRM.
The Honourable Member for Richmond on your first supplementary.
Well, Speaker, it's always good to know the Minister of Justice is on top of things in his department. But I can tell you 3 years ago there were 6 provincial RCMP positions in the CBRM, and we can assure you, Minister, there are not 6 positions there today.
That's right.
Speaker, the Minister has cut resources out of an area where support is desperately needed to address this serious problem. It would appear that the only contribution this Minister of Justice is willing to provide to solving this prescription drug abuse problem in the CBRM is that of casting aspersions on the Chief of Police. So, Minister, quite simply, did you refuse to provide funding assistance for 2 police officers to work on a joint RCMP-CBRM police operation to address the challenges this area is facing with the OxyContin drug problem?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Well, the honourable member seems to be having a difficulty understanding this. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have offered to provide 2 positions to a 4-man task force. CBRM was asked to provide the other 2 positions to a joint task force. A joint task force is not a joint task force unless it has 2 parties. That's the difficulty. The CBRM police refuse to cooperate with a joint task force.
The Honourable Member for Richmond on your final supplementary.
Well, Mr.
You're
Speaker,
blaming them again, Mike.
we are being told...
Order, please. The Honourable Member for Richmond has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, we are being told that there was specifically a request from the CBRM for these 2 RCMP positions, and that is the Minister of Justice who has refused to provide funding for these positions. Mr. Speaker, it is quite clear that this area needs help now. It's time for the Minister of Justice to forget the RCMP police debate that took place in the CBRM and to move forward from that. Page 6 of a summary report on the white paper on policing states that the minister is considering investing provincial resources in policing services that would benefit the whole province, like an organized crime strategy. So my final supplementary is, could the minister please confirm whether this strategy has been developed, and if so, when provincial resources will be available to implement this specific strategy?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is most unfortunate for the people who are suffering in Cape Breton that the Cape Breton Regional Police Force will not get over their historic antagonism to joint operations. Mr. Speaker, that is the solution, to work together on what is a scourge in that municipal unit to help make sure that the innocent people that are being victimized by criminals are dealt with according to the law.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 5 years ago, Kelly Burke was bitten by a tick in New Ross, and she contracted Lyme disease. Now, she didn't get a diagnosis right away. In fact, Mr. Speaker, she didn't get a diagnosis in this province at all. Ignored by the medical system here, she traveled to the United States and paid over $5,000 out of her own pocket to get a test which concluded beyond a doubt that she has Lyme disease. So my question for the Minister of Health is this. We already know Lyme disease is present in the tick population in Nova Scotia, so why isn't our health system better prepared to deal with these cases?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Lyme's disease?
Yeah.
They test for it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and the honourable member raises a very interesting question, and Mr. Speaker, I'll take that question as notice and get back to him.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, maybe I can inform the minister just a little bit. Kelly Burke was tested with an antibody screening test that came back negative, and it turns out that this test, which the Department of Health administers, is accurate only 65% of the time, and doctors are encouraged to look at symptoms as well as tests before ruling out Lyme disease. Now, Lyme disease becomes less treatable over time, and Ms. Burke's nearly 5-year delay in treatment has resulted in chronic pain which she will likely never escape. I want to ask the Minister of Health, why, even after she tested positive for Lyme disease, did Kelly Burke have to fight for months before she received treatment?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and despite the honourable member's preamble, I don't find that I have any more to contribute in terms of an answer now, but I will, in fact, investigate the situation and be very pleased to get back to him.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your final supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I didn't expect wisdom to just kind of spring up from below the minister's feet, but for his edification, I will table a document from the QE2 from 2002 that states that there have been no cases of Lyme disease acquired in Nova Scotia. This is clearly not true, Mr. Speaker. Health officials in this province need to get their heads out of the sand. Lyme disease, Mr. Speaker, is here to stay. My final question to the minister is this: knowing that Lyme disease has been in this province for at least 5 years and that Ms. Burke is unlikely to be the only case, what steps will his department take to ensure that no other family has to go through the anguish the Burkes have faced?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and the honourable member certainly describes a situation that's most unfortunate and not something that any of us like to see any individuals endure. And in as much as it is appropriate for us to be in a position to respond to this, I will certainly be asking the department to give me a full briefing as to the entire situation and how we can best respond to it, so that situations as described by the honourable member would not occur in the future.
The honourable member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health. As the Minister of Health would know, both New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island offer a universal newborn hearing screening program to all infants born in those provinces. Nova Scotia does not. Early detection, Mr. Speaker, results in better outcomes. And obviously, over the long term, it saves in costs. The Nova Scotia Hearing and Speech Centre presented to the Minister a proposal called a sound strategy. Phase 1 of this strategy has a price tag of $500,000, yet no funding was made available in this year's budget. My question for the Minister, what will he be doing to respond to what PEI in New Brunswick are already doing and implement a universal newborn hearing screening program?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I can tell the honourable member that one of the things that we are doing, and we will do very vigorously throughout the course of this summer, is ensure that we make known to the Government of Canada and all Canadians the need for additional funding for health care so that we are able to address concerns such as this and other very, very worthy concerns that are brought forward by members from the opposite side of the House, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The honourable member for Halifax Citadel on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Health is responsible for a budget of $2.2 billion. The measures that are being proposed are ones that will save money over the long term. Depending on where you live in Nova Scotia, you may or may not get screening. Each year, 30 Nova Scotian newborns are born with a permanent hearing loss. Half of them don't get screened. And presently in this province, a 3-year-old has to wait until they are a 5-year-old before they receive treatment, and the hours that they require for their therapy doubles over that 2 years. My question for the Minister, why are we delaying in implementing this program?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We have indeed implemented a program of cochlear implants in this province. We have a program of early intervention. We would like to be in a position to do a great deal more. And Mr. Speaker, the honourable members opposite do a wonderful job of bringing forward those items which we would like to be able to address if we had the resources to be able to do it. And every time I hear them spend another $500,000 or another $3 million, Mr. Speaker, I don't hear one suggestion as to what program it is that I should cut in order to be able to pay for that.
Member for Halifax Citadel on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the message that appears to be missing is that this is something that over the long term actually saves the Nova Scotia government money. These are the kinds of initiatives that save people. Whether it's ABA therapy or early interventions program or a healthy beginnings program, over and over we see this government going at the repair shop instead of looking for the cure in the first place. You can pay for it now or you can pay later. My question for the Minister, in your $2.2 billion budget, why is this government again failing to invest in preventative health care measures, especially for our young children?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, Mr. Speaker, indeed, we are making a very significant investment in preventative health care through the Office of Health Promotion, Mr. Speaker, and that's one that addresses the entire population. We do, however, have very specific challenges of people who have unfortunate conditions, and these require very specific courses of action. We would like to be in a position to be able to respond to all of those, but it is very difficult, Mr. Speaker, when your resources are as limited as they are. We will continue to plan and be in a position to move forward as resources become available.
The honourable member for Cape Breton Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday when I asked the Minister of Health about the Oxycontin epidemic in Cape Breton, he said that he was anxious to learn from their experiences. Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell the Minister about an experience of one of my constituents. This man is an alcoholic who's been trying to get into a detox program. Every day he calls the Cape Breton Regional Hospital to see if they can help him. And every day he is told there is no bed for him in the detox unit because they are filled with Oxycontin abusers. Mr. Speaker, I would want to ask the Minister of Health what he has learned from his experience and what immediate action my constituent can expect to help him beat his addiction.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and what I can tell the honourable member is that we are very anxiously awaiting the report from the community group, and Mr. Speaker, If indeed they feel that it is that their report cannot be forthcoming in the immediate future, then I would want to seek from them an interim report, so that if there are identified programs that we could adopt and respond to, that we'd be in a position to do that.
Member for Cape Breton Nova on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the meantime, this gentleman needs help, Mr. Speaker.
Absolutely. Right
Mr.
on.
Speaker,
Here.
since my constituent cannot get a bed in a detox unit, his family has been paying to keep him in a hotel room. He has lost all his money, has no hope to beat his addiction, and the minister is content to wait for a report. My constituents can't wait, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the minister said he wants to find solutions. Today, I want to give him one. I want to ask the Minister of Health, given the serious addiction problems that need to be addressed, will you reinstate the 21-day residential treatment program?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the advice that the Cape Breton District Health Authority has received from the professionals in addiction treatment is the advice that they implemented. And what they have done is taken the resources that were in the 21-day program and dedicated all of those resources to the treatment of addicts in that area. Mr. Speaker, that's the advice of professionals, and Mr. Speaker, there aren't easy solutions with respect to these problems, and we'll continue to address the problems.
I'll member Cape Breton Nova on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, their advice, Mr. Speaker, was long before there was an epidemic in Cape Breton, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, OxyContin is a serious problem in Cape Breton, and the minister knows that. But my concern that others who also need help are getting lost in the shuffle. Mr. Speaker, I'm asking the Minister of Health for his personal commitment that my constituent will not have to spend another night in a hotel, and that he will get the detox treatment he so badly needs. Will the minister make that commitment today?
Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, the commitment I will make is that we will work with the District Health Authority. We will ask that the work that they are involved in be speeded up where appropriate and where possible, and put ourselves in a position to be able to respond to an interim report while they do and complete their longer-term investigation into that problem. We recognize this as being a very serious problem, and we want to work with the community in addressing it, Mr. Speaker.
Now, member for Kings West.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Education. This past April 25th was a sad day for the future of Nova Scotia. As more and more of our young people leave our province for opportunities elsewhere, we are facing a crisis in being able to support the increase in our seniors' population. Yet instead of taking a proactive approach to this problem, the government is continuing to lack vision by ignoring our education system, the system that is the key to the younger generation's success. My question for the Minister is quite simple. How many more programs have to be cut? How many more teacher positions eliminated? How many more rural schools have to be closed before this government realizes that we have an education system that can no longer wait for a new funding formula?
Now, Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, thank the honourable member for that question, and as he is well aware that the amount of money that has been allocated to public school education and the community college and universities is greater this year than it was last year. Indeed, there are significant amounts of money that are going, additional money is going into public education. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member mentions the need for a new formula, and as I've said in the House on a number of occasions, that a person has been engaged and is beginning now to take a look at the way education is funded in this province and to make suggestions. Indeed, I know that he and my deputy met as late or as recent as yesterday to discuss it.
The honourable member for Kings West on your first supplementary.
Well, Minister, the initiatives for our public school system certainly sound wonderful. But as St. FX University president said, in principle, education is a top priority, but in practice, it's not. It's one thing to jot down some great ideas in the Learning for Life document, but it's another thing to demand school boards to implement these programs with the budget crisis they are facing. For example, CEO Ed Davis of Cape Breton Victoria last week in the Cape Breton Post said they will have trouble implementing the PSP in some schools. Carol Olson of HRSB, appearing before Human Resources, said they will have insufficient funding for the grade 1 cap on class size. Dr. Gunn stating in the Berwick Register there will be no new initiatives in the coming school year. And Chignecto Central have shaved $2.5 million and have a further $1 million to cut. My question again for the Minister of Education, yes or no? Do you not see the huge disconnect between the initiatives you continue to boast about and the reality of the school board finances and the demise of quality education?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
I'm pleased to rise today, Mr. Speaker, to tell the honourable member and all others we have a very good public education system, an exceptionally fine university system in this province. As a matter of fact, the university system in this province is so fine that we have a net importation of 5,000 students from outside the province, which is 14% of our university population.
Now, Member Kings West on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, it is frustrating. It is frustrating for teachers, students, administrators, and parents to keep getting their hopes up, to continue to be disappointed at budget time. The empty promises are getting tired, and frankness would be more welcome from the minister this time. And I quote from Anne Trottier of Parsborough, who I heard from yesterday. As a parent of school-aged children, I have been made aware that there have been 1.5 teacher positions cut at the Parsborough schools. This is unacceptable. As a result of a flawed funding formula, my children are not going to receive the education they deserve in their community. The teachers that educate them will become increasingly strained and stressed. How much more can we take? We have been consistently chiseled away at. My question to the minister is, could the minister please confirm that during the 2004-05 school year, when class sizes in junior high, senior high are well beyond accepted limits, when teachers and students are without basic texts and insufficient resources, and mentally challenged students are forced out the door because on the very day of their 21st birthday an EA will not be provided, will the Department of Education step in with sufficient resources and give adequate funding for these schools to operate?
Now, Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, this government had three major commitments. One was to health. And my honourable colleague, the Minister of Health, has indicated, I believe, there are about $230 million more going to health. Education, and there is a $22 additional million going to education, and also to transportation and public works. Those are priorities for Nova Scotian. Mr. Speaker, if we had unlimited resources, then we could be all things to all people. And as long as you're in opposition, and you don't have to be accountable, you can be all things to all people. We've heard examples of that on the floor today, Mr. Speaker. And, I would go back to some of these questions where the question that came about the hearing speech, Mr. Speaker, that government was in power for 5 years. It was so simple, they should have done it then. I mean, let's get serious about this thing.
Order, please. Order, please. Now, Member Dartmouth East. Order, please. Now, Member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are more than 200 residents in Upper Northfield, Lunenburg County, Nova Scotia, who are concerned about the operation of a quarry in their community. Last year, the quarry operated at all hours of the night. Loud trucks traveled back and forth, and the residents also say that the dust was out of control. They're worried about their health. The quarry is up and running again. All these residents want is for the quarry to operate at reasonable hours, from 6 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. at night, and they're asking for some controls to be put in place. But this week they received this letter from the Minister of Environment and Labour without any commitment to them, Mr. Speaker. My question to the Minister is, you have the ability to restrict the hours of operation of this quarry. Will you do that?
Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for the question. Certainly the issue has come before me and we have looked at that. It's a quarry that is used for road construction and road work that will be carried out throughout the summer. We have a very short time frame to get a lot of work done, and there may be some inconvenience to some of the people in that area.
Now, member for Dartmouth East on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't think the Honourable Minister opposite would enjoy trucks going by his house all hours of the night, and I'm talking all night long. Whether we need roads or not, there are some 200 people that are very concerned. The residents do not want to go through what they went through last summer. They've been trying to cooperate with the Department of Environment, the company involved, and their MLA. Unfortunately, the requests have not been listened to. They're very reasonable. They're just asking for the quarry to stop during the night. They're looking for basic environmental control.